Okay, guys, we're going to talk about parallel lines cut by a transversal and what kind of angles they create. So here are our parallel lines. We have N and M. These lines are parallel, right? They're going to go on and on forever and never meet. And then we have a transversal. P is our transversal. It's the line that cuts across the parallel lines. Okay, so P is our transversal. And if you notice, it makes 8 angles, 4 on each intersection. And I want you to be paying attention to the fact that the intersections look exactly the same. So whatever measurements are going to be on the top intersection will be on the bottom. And now we're just going to look at specific angles. So let's put in degrees here, and I'm going to call this 110 degrees. So if A is 110 degrees, I want to figure out all the other angle measurements. The easiest one to start with is B. And if you notice, A and B create a straight line, which is 180 degrees, which means A and B are supplementary angles because supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. If you add them together, they make a straight line. So if I took 180 and subtracted the 110, I would get 70 degrees. So B is 70 degrees. Now I'm going to tell you that on this entire thing, all 8 angles, they're only going to be either 110 or 70 degrees because that's what happens when you have parallel lines cut by a transversal. You only have those 2 different angle measurements. Now, A and D, let's look at A and D. These are vertical angles. They're directly across from each other. When you have intersecting lines, let's say we have intersecting lines like this, the angles across from each other would be vertical. And so C and D would also be vertical. They're not adjacent, they're not side by side, they're across from each other. And those are our vertical angles. So vertical angles, important thing to know is that vertical angles have the same measurement. Okay? So D is going to equal 110 degrees also because when they're opposite each other, they have the same measurement. So that means B and C are also the same. So they would both be 70 degrees. Now, I could just look at the bottom and automatically I know that this is 110 degrees because A is 110 degrees. These angles are called corresponding angles. They're in the same place on the intersection. So notice here, A is in the top left corner of that intersection. Just get rid of that. So A is in the top left corner of that intersection, and look at A. It's in the top left corner of the bottom intersection. Those are called corresponding angles. That means they're in the same place on the intersection. So if you notice, C corresponds with G. They're both in the bottom left corner. That means they're going to be the same degrees as well because C and G are corresponding angles, and corresponding angles are also congruent. Okay, so if you look on the other side, D corresponds to H. They're both in the bottom right, and so it's also going to be 110 degrees. And F corresponds with B because they're both in the right top. So that's going to be, that's going to be 70 degrees. Notice they're all either 110 or 70 degrees, nothing in between. Okay, so this looks exactly like this. And corresponding angles mean they are in the same location. Okay, vertical angles, remember vertical angles are across from each other, like A and D and C and B. Supplementary angles, oops, sorry about that. Supplementary angles, wow, that was a bad line. Let me fix that. Supplementary angles make a straight line like A and B, okay, or B and D, or F and H, or E and F, or E and G. Those all add up to 180 degrees. Those are supplementary angles. And then another thing we're going to look at is called alternate interior. So interior angles, these are our interior angles. They're inside the parallel lines. Okay, alternate means they're on the opposite side and they're also congruent. So if you look, C and F are both inside the parallel lines, opposite side. So those are called alternate. Oops, I'm sorry. alternate interior angles. So E and D, alternate interior, and C and F are alternate interior. And then the last thing we have to look at is alternate exterior. And alternate exterior, the angles that are on the outside of the parallel line, so A and B and G and H. And alternate means they're on the opposite side of the transversal. So we have A and H would be alternate exterior, and they would also be congruent. So A and H would have the same degrees, and you can see that's the case. So those are our alternate exterior angles. So alternate exterior would be A and H and B and G. Our alternate interior would be C and F and E and D. Okay? Vertical would be A and D, C and B, and you get the hint, E and H, G and F. Those would be vertical. And then supplementary would be A and B, C and D, E and F, G and H, or E and G, F and H, B and D, and A and C. Okay, so that's how we would be able to determine all the angle measures. And again, the top intersection looks exactly the same as the bottom intersection.